up until that point, I had been on Team Jason as my favorite character because I'm a basic bitch that likes the leader type in most of these
Yeah.
series. Like Leonardo is also my favorite Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. I do a Superman podcast. I'm sorry. I understand the type that I am. And welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, J. Mike Folsom.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show.
J. Mike, can I ask you a question?
Most certainly.
Do you know what time it is?
Is it morphin' time?
It's morphin' time!
Oh, my God.
So today we are doing an episode talking about Power Rangers and the sources that brought it, and specifically one Power Ranger that time and time again in the franchise has shown himself to be the Superman of the series. But we're going to do a bigger discussion than just focusing on Tommy Oliver. But to have that conversation, we are joined by Nic Woolfe. All right, can we just take a pause and just note how good the goddamn theme song to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that Ron Wasserman score, man, like, it's so good.
Yeah, and then that Superman twang at the end, it just makes me imagine, what if they adapted the 90s Superboy in the Superman animated series? I just imagine he'd have very Power Ranger soundy music for his theme.
Oh yeah, like the track that was introduced in the Zhu era of the show, like the second half of season 1 where they had new footage shot for the show. They introduced this track which is like Go Green Ranger Go, which had not been in the previous chunk because they didn't think they were going to need like their own theme for a character, and little did they know they would have a breakout success. But that track would be perfect for a Con-El Superboy in the 90s track.
Also should specify shot new Japanese footage for the show.
Yes. Shot new Japanese footage, shot new fight and suit footage is the main point, because this was a series that... Well, so why don't we talk about the history of this franchise and our history first?
The history of Power Rangers, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely talk about that series because that is a big part for why I'm super on board for any Power Rangers conversation. So why don't I start? Because I love talking about Power Rangers. It's been one of my brands. I'm a kid of the 90s. I was born in 84. By the time the series was coming out, I was 9. So I was like, the prime age for it. Dinosaurs, robots, transforming robots, and people in spandex are all things that are like checkboxes on the, like, these are cases interest. And so, of course, I was into it. And like, we were so into the toys when I was like, the season 1 era of the show and season 2 era of the show. I had the Titanus, which of course, like, kind of felt like the lame one to have. In retrospect, I regret like getting rid of it because it was so
got rid of it.
Because we all go through phases where we kind of like lose sight of our things.
Shame on you.
I had lost most of the parts by that point, so we're talking
fair.
about the base Titanus that like the tail / guns had already had been lost, as well as like the giant sauropod treads. It had like these like big paws that became like the gloves of the Megazord. All those pieces were gone by this point. Long story short, I was a big fan of the series, but then adolescent kicks in and you sort of like back up.
Somehow I lost both my Tiger Zord and my Astro Megaship. I still have the Nasada shuttle that forms the head for the Astro Megaship, but not the...
Oh, cool.
It frustrates me because I don't know where that or the Tiger Zord is. Yeah.
I had the Tiger Zord. I actually gave the Tiger Zord to my friend who I knew would have a better display for it at his house.
Yeah.
Like he has like big like displays of like Gundams and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you'll definitely get more use out of this. Now, this is still when I was in the phase of like my 20s where, because like adolescence kicks in and, you start to feel embarrassed. Like I stuck through the show, through Zeo. It was Turbo where I kind of like fell off because I was already getting the social pressures to dip out. And that was the season where when it came in, I was like, oh, we new powers again? And because I didn't know all the underlying reasons for why the show worked at that point. But it was like, oh, new powers and it's cars? Like that feels like a downgrade from everything we've had so far. All of it just kind of felt off to me before the movie even came out and before the show even came out. And so I was like, all right, you know what? Zeo had a good finale. I'm kind of good with the show as it is. I don't need necessarily more for me. And then years later, I find out about this series online called The History of Power Rangers by Linkara, and I'm like, fuck it, I'll check it out. I like, I'm curious about the history of Power Rangers because a friend of the show, Maddie Ryan Limerick, had blown my mind at one point by like mentioning that it was like Japanese footage, because I just didn't know that. And like, it wasn't a series I like dug deep into, so it wasn't one that was like in my like wheelhouse. So I was just like, oh, when he mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's crazy, that's really cool. And I wanted to know more. And so when this series like popped up, because I was that guy with the glasses fan. I think there's a lot of people who were Channel Awesome fans at a certain point, particularly around the 2010s to 2012s era. Like that just, was a good time for that fandom. But so History of Power Rangers came out, and he puts forth this theory about season 1 being a Wizard of Oz situation. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really goddamn cool. And like, it, talks a bit about the actual making of the series and like, how they're putting things together. And I start finding out about memes, and I go down, I hyperfixate, because that's the thing I do. And I went down the giant rabbit hole getting really into it. And like, I watched this whole series, which at that point, Dino Thunder was the last one that had come out. So like I joined the series not like right when it came out, but a little bit longer into the run. And so I like watched all of those, and at a certain point I was like, well, I'm looking forward to the next one, but like in the meantime, I guess I'm just going to watch Power Rangers SPD, because I wanted to like get that fix. And SPD, while there's some elements of the series that are questionable in light of my thoughts on like propaganda and stuff like that, SPD rocks. The soundtrack is awesome. The cast is great. The themes of the series are really good. It's a series where it doesn't feel weird that they have cars, because they're cops, and it's like all cop cars that turn into robots, which is like pretty cool, frankly. Like, I'm pretty sure there were a bunch of series like that in the 80s that I probably ate the hell out of.
SPD is also kind of a good example of a Superboy story, because they're the B squad, the Rangers we follow, and they have to live up to the standards of the A squad, who are missing in action.
Yeah, that was another thing I really loved about SPD. It's deliberately, like, as Nick said, the B squad. And so the whole time they're supposed to be not the heroes, but they're the rookies who are like trying to live up to it. And that was like such a good vibe for the season. Like, it was a cool dynamic for them to like really go on. So cool series, got me into it enough, and I had been doing enough research that I was like feeling pretty confident. I like then went back and watched pretty much the entire run up until that point. I watched most of the season. Actually, I watched all of the seasons from that point up until Ninja Steels, where I like actually like fully dropped a season. It's the first time I did not make it through one. Still love the series, and like really got into it all. Like, have really appreciated it all. But it's wild, because it's one where I had that base nostalgia, and then I had the later life nostalgia, and they are two very different things. Like, one is way more expansive, like the later life stuff is way more expansive, but it's still rooted in that childhood passion. So, J Mike, I'm curious for you, what is your history with Power Rangers?
Elementary school drama, everyone going out to like the playgrounds at lunchtime and everything. Like, I want to be the Green Ranger. No, I want to be the Green Ranger. I want to be the Red Ranger. Running around, having fun and everything. Coming home from school, watching it. What channel was that? Was it Fox Kids?
It was Fox, yeah.
Yeah.
Coming there, like,
I mean,
oh my
we're
gosh,
all
this is
DC
so
area
cool.
people. We were watching the same, like, Fox 5. Or
I was in Florida, dude.
Oh, that's right. That's true. Yeah.
Coming home, watching this stuff, being awestruck at how cool it was with those nostalgic glasses on. And then I remember like when the first trailers for the movie came out, and you're like completely blown away.
Yeah, that teaser for the movie where it's like just the helmets, like, man, I was so primed for that movie.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing of my life. I think I stopped when I was younger watching it right around the Zeo era. So I was like, this is cool and everything, and everyone got lost their powers and got turned into kids.
Yep.
And I was like, this is kind of cool. I think I just kind of fell off at that point. But like up until then, it was Power Rangers every day, all day, every day, with a little mix of like Saturday morning cartoons in there. But it was all Power Rangers, dude.
Yeah. That's the thing that we also should emphasize. The show was so dominating when it first came out, because it was 5 days a week during the week. It wasn't like a once a week release.
Yeah, it was like 5 days a week right after kids got out of school. So it's like kids are coming home from school, like running to the TV, sitting down, like throwing on Power Rangers.
Yeah, it released in like blocks, and so like it would put out a bunch of episodes, and you would watch those ones every single day until the next block came out. So like when Green with Evil came out introducing Tommy, it was that week. Every day we were like getting updates and coming into school and being like, "Can you believe this stuff? Can you believe it?
Oh my gosh, this is so cool."
Yeah. So like you faded out like around the same time I did, although I stuck with it just a little bit longer. Did you have a moment where you kind of came back to it all? Like Power Rangers has had a resurgence in pop culture recently.
Yeah, I think I would see things like on YouTube, people were talking about it and everything. I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember those days. Those are great days. Looking back, oh man, those were fun times. And I think right around the reboot movie, what was it, 2017?
Yes.
Yeah.
When they had like the really big, fancy, multi-million-dollar movie reboot. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I watched it and I was like, it's cool, but it doesn't hit the same, the same things that the other movies did. It's not giving me that, it's not scratching that itch. It was a cool movie, but it didn't have the same pull as the originals did. And I think there was a new one coming out. And I think I watched a little bit of the show they did on Netflix, like the big revival thing.
Oh, Once and Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is tears coming down her face.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I remember these days.
Mm. I think Once and Always made me cry like 4 times when I first saw it.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, this is my shit back in the day.
That's just nostalgia in a needle. Like Netflix, I don't know how you did it, but you made a thing that just is like, oh yeah, it's designed specifically for fans of the show from that time. Take it into the vein right now. Go for it. Tap, tap, tap.
It's like, oh gosh, inject this directly into my veins.
Yeah.
I missed this so much. During the Zeo arc and right before that ended, and I think it was Turbo after that.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I think I'm kind of done. I think I'm kind of done with this one for a while.
Yeah, I feel like that was pretty consistent for fans in general around that era.
It was? I thought it was just me because I was like, all right, cool, this is...
Well, I mean,
yeah,
like,
I think I've grown out of this.
The show had its peak during its first and second season, and then each season after that, like, there was a little bit of a drop off. There have been like efforts to like capture the lightning again that have been more successful, such as the end of In Space, and then
was it Lost Galaxy and some other stuff there was
right,
there too?
yeah, Lost Galaxy is the first one that came out where I'm like, oh, they're still going, good on them.
I remember I think I turned on TV and I think I heard a trailer for it, and I remember specifically like the theme song for that season, the Lost Galaxy season. I was like, oh shoot, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I was like, oh, maybe I should watch this stuff again. Some other day I'll come back to it.
Nick, how about you? What's your history with the show?
So I remember always having Power Rangers. Like, I remember when I first was aware, I was like, oh, they're Power Rangers toys, and they have the Power Rangers VHSs. Like, I still got my VHSs for the entire Green with Evil saga in my bedroom. I remember them being recorded from the TV as well. I remember being confused because I kept thinking, wait, has Tommy lost his powers or hasn't he? Because he loses them twice, his Green Ranger powers.
Mm-hmm.
Which Missing Green is probably one of my favorite episodes because it deals with the fallout of that and everything. But we can probably talk about that later in relation to another Ranger character. But yeah, I saw all 3 seasons of Mighty Morphin, Alien Rangers miniseries, Zeo, Turbo, In Space. I watched a bit of Lost Galaxy, and I think I fell off right as the Lights of Orion arc was ending, because that was kind of a mess of an arc.
That's a slog.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have to fight through that one to watch the whole season.
Then, because for some reason McDonald's released the Lost Galaxy Lightspeed Rescue crossover, like, all right, I'll watch Lightspeed Rescue then. Lightspeed Rescue seems cool. A team of like first responder rangers. I dig it.
Yeah.
And then I fell off again with Time Force. I think I quit right before the quantum powers were introduced and Eric was there.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Because Time Force is like usually like held up as one of the best.
You also have to keep in mind that Time Ranger, the Sentai is based on, was a merchandise failure because they only had so few Megazords. That's why when they went to Gal Ranger Wild Force, it was like, throw in all the Zords. We got 100 Zords. You got to find them all.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I stopped after Time Force, and then I think in high school, my friend said, hey, you got to watch Power Rangers RPM. It's totally dope. And I did. It was dope. And then there was backlash to it. It's like, oh, they do that thing that was like, oh, why are we posing? We're self-aware about our tropes. And it's like, oh, am I going to still like the show? Rewatch it last year or in 2022. It's like, no, I think it still mostly holds up.
Yeah, no, I need to chime in here. RPM is dope. It is like it is such a great self-contained season that is shocking that it is a Power Ranger season. And the moments where it's self-aware is fine because it's also a very hardcore series. So like the humor is juxtaposed between the much more serious themes that are going on throughout the whole thing. Long story short, RPM is one of the high watermarks of the series as a whole.
I think after watching RPM, I also discovered History of Power Rangers from the beginning. I actually discovered Linkar in his early days when I think his first review of his I saw was his Secret Defenders number 10 issue. Like I'm an old head when it comes to those Channel Awesome days.
Yeah.
And then I tried and failed to watch the Neo Saban series. I think I almost finished the first season of Samurai. It's like, fell off. But I did watch the Clash of Red Ranger movie. I think I watched like 5 episodes of Megaforce, and it's like, this is throwing back to MMPR in a bad way that I'm not really digging.
Yeah.
But maybe the Legendary Battle would be good when it gets around to it.
It was not.
And then Dino Charge was the one series that I watched the most. I finished the complete season, and I started the second season, but then I fell off when the Aqua Ranger was introduced. We finally found out who the Aqua Ranger was. I'm not going to spoil it, but I don't know. It's probably an issue of time. And then I never really fully watched any series again, but I kept up with History of Power Rangers, so I was always in the loop.
Yeah.
I have not seen anything of Hyperforce.
Yeah. Dino Charge, I will also say, is one I really like as well. Good series abound for it. But like I said, oh man, the fact that you did make it through Dino Charge saved you from Ninja Steel is the thing I will say there. Ninja Steel is a rough season of Power Rangers.
They did ninjas again?
They've done dinosaurs like 4 times, man. Like,
well, yeah. Well, I mean, the primary one was the dinosaur one, but like, how many times can you go back to ninjas?
Apparently, at least 3.
Like 4 or 5 times, yeah.
Huh.
Because they had the Alien Rangers, which were a ninja theme series in Japan.
The Ninjetti.
Well, yeah, the Ninjetti stuff was part of the same season as the Alien Ranger stuff. But then you had Ninja Storm, and then you had Ninja Steel, but you also had Samurai, which is like obviously not the same thing, but in the Western understanding of it is.
I just imagine Bandai after Power Rangers was canceled being like, Power Rangers was canceled. We can finally move away from shooting things that are supposed to be translated easily to a Western audience. Let's go full into the Japanese iconography. And then Power Rangers gets bought back.
That's definitely what happened with Samurai. Like, they were like, oh, we can finally like lean into it. It's the same reason why they like leaned into like trains. A thing that like the Western audience are just not going to understand, and why they like totally skipped it here.
I'm going to say because of that Clash of the Red Ranger show where you can travel between dimension through trains, I want a Trangers adaptation. That's a sequel to RPM.
All right, so for listeners at home who are not familiar with this franchise and are like, why the hell are they talking about Power Rangers or whatever this thing is on our Superman show? The history of Power Rangers is deeply tied into Western comics love. I don't think it's a big jump to say that you could draw a lineage from Superman to the Power Rangers series as a whole. The reason why is Spider-Man. So for the listeners at home who may not know this, Marvel Comics used to be heavily involved in making Japanese live-action TV shows. They were producers on a whole bunch of weird stuff, including a Japanese Spider-Man TV show where he had a giant robot.
Leopardon. That's also where the I am an emissary from hell meme comes up. If that's not in Beyond the Spider-Verse, I will riot.
It's gotta be, because they used it in the comic story that Beyond is more like based on. So Spider-Man was a Marvel joint production that, when you think about it, it was about a spandex-clad superhero who had a giant robot. And the next series that it was supposed to be adapting from Marvel Comics was Captain America. But for a variety of reasons, that kind of fell through. As a result, the series sort of gets recontextualized as this UN-themed super team, Battle Fever J, with a Miss America, and then there's like whole roster. And that's the birth of Super Sentai as a thing. It was a combination of Sentai, where you would have like a team of heroes that were like kind of color coordinated, and then this robot concept and the powers that were part of it. Because like when you think about like what the Power Rangers do, they got big jumps and flips and they're really strong. It's pretty Spider-Man-ish when you get down to it, or pretty 1930s Superman-ish if you really, really want to get down to it.
Yeah.
And so that became the foundation for this like team of heroes who would slowly over their iterations have all kinds of concepts in terms of like what the season theme was about, because each season would have its own cast with its own like gimmick to it all. So you would end up with color theory going into like, well, what types of characters are consistently these colors? The robots would get more complicated, eventually getting to the point where they'd have combining robots, which was a big deal, getting to eventually the Zord concept, where it's like these robot animal avatars, which actually came around with Jew Ranger. Before that, it was all like vessels. Like the closest you would get was the previous season with Jetman, but even that, they were still in jets, even if they were bird themed jets. I know, but I like
If I mentioned all the other animal themed vehicles, we'd be here all night.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. But what I'm saying is like the first time where we actually like the Saber-tooth Tiger Zord is unique from anything prior to it. They were all more vehicle like in form because each season was an evolution of the concepts that they could play with. That's going on in Japan, and eventually Marvel dips out. I think it's after Sun Vulcan is their last one that they do. Don't quote me on that one, but they were a producer on Super Sentai for a number of seasons. Sun Vulcan, I will throw out there as being the one that I wanted to use as the basis for a comedy Power Rangers situation that I was going to create with some friends, where we were going to record us as like a group of just like stoners. Or really, we were supposed to be like drunks because it was going to be Dionysus was empowering us to become like these heroes. And then like we would keep on getting called into situations where we would transform, and we would just use the footage from Sun Vulcan. That never really got off the ground, but I did like start working on like scripts for it.
How very USA dub of Dynaman of you.
Yeah, so
this is a wide rabbit hole, listeners.
Yeah. Since we're taking this a little bit from a historical standpoint, this is the time to talk about the attempts. So yeah, there was a previous adaptation before we get to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that USA did doing Dynaman, which was a previous season.
I want to say it was going to be like baseball themed, but like, no, we can't do baseball. Let's just do explosions. And that's why there's explosions in Super Sentai, because Dynaman did so many explosions.
It just became a thing. And like that's a thing about the series, which is that each season having its own cast, its own setups, and like all that stuff, like they're allowed to iterate really well. Now, it does mean that there's a scenario where there's recurring season themes. There are many car seasons, for example. There have been many, like, here's our family dynamic kind of seasons that are in there. There have been many where you have your main three and then you get, like, let extra ones pop in afterwards kind of seasons. There's a lot of, like, structural ones that have popped in. Also, the show has been allowed to, like, every now and then like go back to pre-existing formulas in an effort to like stay fresh and dynamic in this whole thing. So it's a rapidly iterating and interesting kind of property as a whole. And then you get this whole like element of that I want to talk about for a minute, which is just the color theory for the characters, that you typically have the red as a leader, or at least as the protagonist, because sometimes you'll have like the black or the white or whatever other member of the team as the quote unquote leader, but the lead of the show is generally speaking the Red Ranger. And that's usually like the Red Oni kind of personality. It's like a little bit of a hothead, relatively speaking, in the Sentai. And then in America, like our concept of who the most heroic type would be often is the stoic leader. And so that it kind of gets like jumbled around that way. But then you've got Blue, which is oftentimes like a friend Lancer and or sometimes like the kid in the group. It sometimes can be the woman with like a cyan kind of blue in the design. In those seasons, typically Yellow is then going to be male in those seasons. Not that it is required that Yellow is ever female. As we all know, in Jew Ranger, the thing that was adapted into Power Rangers, the Yellow Ranger was a boy who was named Boy. that they were like, oh, there's too many men on this team. We need to have like at least a second female character. And so they gender flipped it. Weirdly, scenario where the Power Rangers is more progressive than the Japanese roots, but they play around with some of the colors, can be like whichever. But for example, it was a big deal to have like the Red Ranger in Shinkenger, which became Power Ranger Samurai, for example. Like there are certain ones that have typically been locked into male roles, with, you know, weird exceptions that have been put in there. Pink is usually a female character, obviously. It's the girl. If we're going to do like the 5-man band kind of breakdown of a Power Rangers team, like Pink is the girl, quote unquote. Or sometimes white. And sometimes teams have both a white and a pink ranger, but the white ranger always has pink highlights and the pink ranger always has white highlights. It's just this like weird thing that they used to do and still sometimes do. if you have a character who is a White Ranger who is male, it's going to be the 6th Ranger, which we'll talk about in a second. Black is usually a mentor or lancer type, so it can sometimes be a rival to the Red Ranger, can sometimes be a leader type, but it is also, generally speaking, a male character. Green is typically sort of like another dude in the group, like whatever isn't already filled. Like
The
it might
funny
be
guy.
it might be the funny guy, might be the big guy, like might be the smart guy. It's whatever isn't already like kind of occupied, and alternates with Black in terms of like which seasons that they're in. This is why when we get to the 6th Ranger concept, which was actually introduced in Zyuranger officially, because they had like prototype 6th Rangers, but where you actually have a new Ranger show up later in the season. That concept right there is first on a Zyuranger, and thus in Power Rangers is the first representation of that. So when you think of the Green Ranger, like that's where it comes from. But the reason why the Green Ranger is the 6th Ranger is because green is the color that they were missing that season. Typically, the most frequent thing that they would have is either black or green. So that season happened to have a black Mastodon Ranger or black Mammoth Ranger in the Sentai. And so the 6th Ranger was green because, that's what we're missing. That's why then when you get to Zeo, the Gold Ranger in Japan was actually considered a Black Ranger. And that's the thing that they were missing in that season. So like I said, the first male White Ranger is the White Ranger that we got in the 2nd season of Power Rangers. It's also the second 6th Ranger that they ever did. So it's its own thing. And then the following season didn't actually have a proper 6th Ranger. So that's why Tommy and Kimberly oftentimes had to like share a cockpit in scenes because they just didn't actually have another Zord.
So, fun fact, I remember having the Shogun Zord as like a Christmas present, but I also remember like taking the pink Shogun Zord and trying to color it white with crayon to try and make it show accurate.
Yeah, because it was actually the White Ranger Zord in that series, and the Falcon was in that season. It was like a Titanus type thing, so that actually was like a weird area where it like kind of synced up. Anyway, long story short, after that they would start branching out and have new kind of colors as the 6 Rangers. Silver and gold became really popular ones, but it's like all over the place. Like Time Ranger, Time Force actually has a second Red Ranger as their 6 Ranger.
Breaking the rules.
Well, it like the 6 Ranger is designed to break the rules. Like each one is supposed to be kind of like a shift in it. Like it's consistent in design and theme to the season, but has like specific elements to reflect that they are different, oftentimes more powerful, but usually a wild card. And so like, well, what is kind of going on with this character? Like sometimes they show up and they're evil to begin with. In the case of Die Ranger, for example, the White Ranger from season 2, that's a Captain Marvel type situation where it's a kid who transforms into an adult superhero.
Which makes it really awkward when the White Ranger in America has to make a whole bunch of exaggerated movements like he is a 10-year-old boy because he was a 10-year-old boy in the Japanese.
Right. So like the 6th Ranger is always supposed to be kind of a deviation from the team in some way, and that gets into the other sort of thing, which is the Ranger-like allies, which are the characters like the Ninjor from season 3 of Power Rangers, where they have elements that are related to that season of Power Rangers, but are generally speaking like more built out, kind of monstrous looking. And by monstrous, I mean the way that the monsters in the show look, not necessarily like monstrous in like a actually like terrifying thing. Oftentimes they look like knights or things like that, and are oftentimes more like mentor types or like begrudging allies of the team. I just think it's really cool that we are getting to this sort of like refinement of storytelling where you know what the archetypes of the team are and you just like lean into it and just color code them. Like that's the thing I find really cool about Power Rangers. It's the thing, I've mentioned this before, I've worked on scripts that are kind of Power Rangers inspired, and that's the thing that I find really like compelling about it all. It frees you up to sort of think about the broader world that you're existing in. Like each team has its own theme, whether it's dinosaurs or ninjas or Chinese mythological beasts or whatever we're talking about. Each season has a theme to it, and that is a thing you can kind of delve into because you already know what the basic framework is going to be, which is that it's going to be a bunch of teenagers with attitude, and they're going to be in color-coded spandex with giant robots that correspond to that color-coded spandex. And Dr. K would be so mad at me right now because she would say, it's not spandex.
It's a self-assembling nanofiber.
So USA tries to do an adaptation of Dynaman, and then Haimsa Bond, who is notable for doing a bunch of TV shows prior to then becoming a producer, gets this idea of trying to adapt Bioman initially, but then when they finally sell it and like get some money going for it, by that point Jetman was out and had gotten critical acclaim, and the studio wanted them to use the next season that was coming out, which was Zyuranger. which, like I said, is a dinosaur themed series that is like cutting edge in a bunch of ways. Although it's not as well received as the season that precedes it, just because Jetman, which is a G-Force or Battle of the Planets type series, is just so goddamn good.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone remembers Power Rangers, the series adapted from it, because it was a hit. It was huge here.
Huge.
I believe I'm the oldest person on the call, and I remember the giant fanfare and the articles written about it, and like I would just see it, and like the grown-up magazines would be like, what's up with this Power Ranger craze, like what's going on? And I would like just devour it all. And like the toys were so popular. I remember that Christmas that the Dinosaur figure came out. Jesus Christ, just goddamn huge. And no moment in that series was bigger than when they introduced the Green Ranger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
And then everything changed.
peak.
Yeah, and so it was interesting here because they introduced like this rival character who is a match for Jason and is like just as cool, and like Kimberly and he like vibe with each other. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this is like if central casting was like just putting out like who are we going to put out as the Red Ranger, both of these actors would be like up for the parts, which like may have actually happened behind the scenes. I'm not entirely sure. We're talking about two very similar type actors who in the world of the show, because they're all like giant goodies, they're both really good guys who are square-jawed leadership types, and this one's set up to then be mind controlled into being a villain and is allowed to be, you know, all evil with like these moments of where things like almost are like done for, like the Zords are destroyed and we have that like crazy battle with like Goldar and Scorpina and the giant Green Ranger against a depowered Megazord, like wild stuff, like Zordon is cut off, like it's, you know, it's a tense five-parter like it was a goddamn movie.
That was primetime too, right?
No, it was not primetime. The primetime
Ah.
stuff that they would do would be the Lord Zed introduction.
Yeah, season 2.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
season 1, this was still just after school. And that's what felt so exciting about it. You came home after school to catch the new episodes and go into school and be like, can you guys believe the shit that just happened? Like,
Did you see what happened?
when the Dragon Zord shows up, and the Dragon Zord, which is, for the record, Mecha Godzilla, full stop. Like, finger rockets, like a buzzsaw blade at the tip of a tail. It's Mecha Godzilla. It makes the Godzilla roar. And that gets a Power Ranger. And it's a cool Power Ranger. Like the Green Ranger, like I was saying, the Six Rangers always have like changes in design. So the Green Ranger has the basic design of the season 1 Power Rangers, except instead of diamonds on his wrists and ankles, they're triangles, and they've got gold trim on them. And then he's got this chest plate, which they call a shield, and functions as a shield when he like plays the song to like reflect stuff. Very much casting shield in Dungeons and Dragons right there. It's this very cool like chess piece that, at least in the Japanese footage, is this like carved foam stuff, and then the American footage is infamously this big baggy like fabric thing that they have on him.
Don't quote me on this, but I think some like guidebook or something may have retconned that to be like the first battleizer.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So in like the Japanese series, the character like steals this like extra armor, which is the thing that he's got, and then later on transfers it over permanently to the Red Ranger, who then uses it throughout the remainder of the series. Because he doesn't lose his powers, he dies in the Japanese thing. And I'm not going to go into... Actually, it is really cool. So he's already dead before the series starts, and he had lost some time, and so he's given a candle that burns the last of his time, and that's where the green candle comes from in the show. That's actually like a really cool thing. Pure Eye, the Green Ranger in the Japanese series, is so fucking cool. I love all that stuff going on with him. Also, I believe the actor was like a previous Red Ranger, and so like that was like a nod for fans of the series. Like the Green Ranger is the match for the Red Ranger of the season because he's a previous Red Ranger. Yeah, so this introduces Tommy, who is like this rival character who has a Zord that's just as powerful, like powerful enough to like stand up to the Megazord by itself. Like, how cool is that?
And you get the flute.
Yes, he had the dragon dagger, this flute dagger that was really powerful as a weapon relative to everyone else's like individual weapons. It was such a dynamic introduction. Like he had all this extra ability, like he does like a Kamehameha and like blasts them and does all these things. You know, it's obvious that he's being empowered by Rita at that point, but afterwards he still seems to be the most powerful Ranger. And like, that's kind of interesting. Like, it's a way of like assembling your team and then all of a sudden introducing the Superman to the team.
It's more of a Hadouken, but yeah, that's right. And he never uses it again. But to
Never.
be fair, neither does the Sentai.
Right. And like I said, I think you could argue that at least in the American series, it's like, oh, he's being charged up by Rita. You know, it makes enough sense. He also never grows again. That's not true. He actually does grow again in Zio.
That's right, the finale.
Yeah. So this introduces Tommy, and then all of a sudden we've got two big square-jawed leader types on the team. Not to mention Zach and Billy, who are also both like square-jawed. Like Billy, I don't know how the hell they sold us on him being like a nerd that gets picked on, because like Jesus Christ, the guy's arms are like the size of most people's heads.
Glasses and sleeves, I guess.
Yeah.
What did he have, overalls for a second?
A lot, yeah,
I
in
guess.
season 1. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's where they could try to like pitch it that way.
I'll talk about the comics when it's pertinent to, but I do love that after like the first big arc in the comics, Tommy and Billy start bonding, and the way they do that is like they start like working out together, like putting on more muscle, and people start commenting on Billy's increased muscle mass.
Oh, good, because by the time you get to Zio, it's weird. Like not weird that it exists. It's like it's just like weird that he's like still like, oh, it's the nerd, and not like, oh, it's everyone's giant big brother.
Oh, it's everyone's dad. He graduates early, and then he marries a fish woman, and then he becomes the Ted Kord of Power Rangers by once and always.
Yep. Yeah, this show is so wild, man. Like the continuity that has remained. You get a couple seasons where they like try to like shoehorn the new gimmicks into the existing team. And first they do it by way of the Zords being like damaged, but can then like turn into these more powerful forms, but they keep the same base costumes for everyone. Season 3 is where it gets really interesting in terms of like how they structure it, because they basically do the season in reverse. The Zords that they start off with are actually like the in-season Zords from the Japanese, and vice versa. So like they work their way backwards, and by the time they get to the backwards point, that's when they insert the actual footage, like the suit footage from the Japanese series, which is the Alien Rangers, and that's the mini series. Like it's a series told in reverse, which I find incredible that they figured out a way to edit that series to work that way. Like that is just mind-blowing to me.
It was the 90s, man.
Yeah. My other white whale are the Alien Rangers Battleborgs. Even if they didn't combine into a giant robot, still one of them.
Yeah, because those Battleborgs are clearly the Shogun swords, just without like a piece of their armor.
Without, yeah.
It's so wild that they like somehow work their way in reverse to that point, because it goes the Battleborgs actually, then the Shogun swords, then the Ninja swords in the Japanese series. But by this point, we had Tommy. They had this issue because in the original Japanese series, the Green Ranger dies midway through the season and is just dead from that point on. But because he was a huge hit, like, oh my God, remember when the show would air, like you wouldn't know what episode was playing. You know, it was a decent chance it was a rerun. You still wanted it to be a Tommy episode. And so like they would go through the roster and like they would hit the note and they would have the footage of Tommy in the lineup. It'd be like, go, God damn it. Yes, this is one of those. Like, I'm so happy for it to be one of those episodes right now. I don't need it to be the goddamn pig episode again.
Aw, don't say bad things about Pudgy Pig.
Pudgy Pig is fine, but it felt like
after like the 10th time.
Like that was in that first block that I watched a lot of those episodes, and like it took a while for them to get the next block out.
Yeah, and then they brought him back.
But anyways, they went back to do the new footage for the suit actors.
Mm-hmm. It was like, Toei, please shoot more fight scene footage for our show.
Yeah, which is interesting to think about. It's like this whole like epilogue effectively, because there are still some like continuity to like Zyurangers in there, even though it's technically like over at that point, because they're still like acting out the way that the characters would act out because they didn't know better. Like there's some elements that are like integrated in from the show. Like there's like the Blue Ranger being the tech guy, for example, is like integrated in, that was not in the suit stuff before, because the Japanese Blue Ranger was actually like the class clown character.
That and the Pink and the Green Ranger were more friendly in their suits in the Zyu footage.
Exactly. They got them to shoot this, but then for season 2, they're like, all right, we're going to use the next season of Super Sentai and use that footage instead. And so they decide that they're going to use the Zord footage from that, but actually shoot original American footage. There's original American suit footage. They use some of the Zhu 2 footage. They use some of the Zhu 1 footage to hack together this weird bastard season. But the thing is, they really don't have any footage to use of the Green Ranger. In fact, all the Dragon Zord fighting the Monster of the Week stuff, if it wasn't Zhu 2 footage, was like just shots of the Dragon Zord firing and then cut to the monster like blowing up. Right.
Exploding.
Like there's no like interaction.
Oh, we should mention that, yeah, Tommy lost his powers, but then he got like an upgrade so that he can kind of use them again for like season 1 and the start of season 2.
Right, yeah.
Just want to throw that out real quick.
Yeah, for people who have no idea what we're talking about, I'm assuming that we're all like 40-year-old men who are like vaguely aware of Power Rangers at this point. That's what this episode is, man. Like, we're 50 minutes in. Like, if you don't kind of know what we're talking about, like, what are you doing here?
Again, I was confused as a child, thinking, wait, does Tommy have his powers or not? What's going on?
Right. And it made it convenient because his powers would wax and wane, and so he could come back or come in, but they were just running out of footage for him. And so ultimately it was decided, well, there's a Sixth Ranger in the new season. We'll bring that character over. And that Sixth Ranger's design looked close enough to the previous season's design in a way that the main team didn't. Like, the main team does not look very similar to the Zhu Ranger team, but the White Ranger looked close enough. It made sense that he was like missing the Harley Quinn design. Like, he's all white. So like the flip of season 1 of Power Rangers, season 2 of Power Rangers is that the main team were real animals, and then the Dragon Zord is a mythological creature as the Sixth Ranger Zord. And then in season 2, the main team are all mythological things. It's a dragon, it's a griffin, a unicorn, all that. And then it's a tiger spirit is the Sixth Ranger one. So it's actually like kind of more consistent in design with them in its own way.
Wait, for the White Ranger, wasn't his sword sentient?
Yes. So it's Saba, the sentient longsword, which was, great in that season, and then like forgotten about the next season because the next season had the same exact problem, which they had to shoot American footage for this character that didn't have an equivalent in the season. But after getting through 3 seasons of it, it's decided that they're going to move away from trying to like fit the theme of the season in, but keep it Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And they decide to like at least adopt it where each season is going to be adopting fully the gimmick of the season so that they can at least use the suit footage from Japan, which they were not able to do for 2 seasons at that point, which, kind of was the whole point of the show. And so that's where we get to Zeo, where it's like fully new powers, so it's new costumes and everything. And the decision is made to make Tommy the Red Ranger in that season.
Which, good move, until they retconned his backstory. Middle of Zeo.
So what he's referring to is that there's the whole issue in the first season of Power Rangers where the Black Ranger is a black guy and the Yellow Ranger is an Asian woman. And in Zeo, they reveal that Tommy actually has Native American ancestry, and this happens to be the season where he is made the Red Ranger.
Yeah. The Yellow Ranger, Black Ranger stuff is like 5 episodes in when the implications hit the production team is like, oh.
Right.
And then they course corrected when they introduced the Stone Canyon trio to replace the actors who were fired for wanting more money.
Power Rangers contains multitudes. They sometimes are on the right side of history and sometimes the wrong, and sometimes they are both. But yeah, so it makes sense to make Tommy the Red Ranger at that point. Like we said, the Red Ranger is supposed to be the leader type. Traditionally, the Sixth Ranger is not the leader, and so it was already something that they were kind of like shoehorning in because the decision had been made to make Tommy the leader when at the same time they fired the original trio when they fired Jason.
They had to use stock footage of Jason saying, oh yeah, this is great.
Yep.
When Zoran's like, Tom is the leader now.
Yep. It was some weird butchery of editing that they had to do. Starting with season 1, of course, where they had to like somehow make the whole concept of the show work. But season 2, it's incredible. Season 3, like I said, it's fascinating that they do the season in reverse. Mm-hmm. But they got tired of doing that for Zeo. So that's why we return to using the Sentai footage. We roll with whatever the weird contrivances of the season are to a certain degree. They don't do the time travel thing or whatever it is with like the 2 princes are actually the same character, just at different points in their life. They just have them as 2 separate characters, which makes plenty of sense.
Yeah, Prince Sprocket and Prince Gasket. Where in the Sentai, the robot baby character is murdered and then rebuilt into the tall, princely character.
Thank you for explaining it better than me. I was trying to remember the details on that one.
Listen, when O Ranger goes hard, it goes hard.
Yeah. But then we get another cast flip after we get into the next season, which is Turbo, which is, like you said before, where I dropped off. Turbo actually is a comedy season in Japan, and thus, like, is one of those where it's like, yeah, no, better in the Sentai.
It's specifically a parody of an older Sentai season, I believe.
Which is actually
like
Turbo
they're
Ranger.
Parodying, yeah, Car Ranger is parodying their Turbo Ranger.
Right. So, yeah, when I actually like sat down and watched Turbo, it was nice just to be like, oh yeah, it's more stuff with the Rangers that I like. So it is more stuff with Tommy, which is like nice to see. It is rough up until they do the cast switch. And then once the cast switch happens, it's actually a really like good season, which is like frustrating to look at. But if you're just here for that original cast, it is really weird just to like leave them in the middle of it. But that's what happens. And at this point, Power Rangers has been doing that for a while. And that's the big reason why it felt like, for me, I needed to jump ship, because I didn't understand that the Japanese series was a new concept every single season. So each season starts to like have some amount of small change until we get through the end of In Space. During this period, for example, we have Andros, who's brought in as the new Red Ranger in that season, who I think there's a strong case to be made for being a Superman analog. He's an alien with psychic powers, and he's the one who gets the first true battleizer, the first like what they call a battleizer, which includes a jetpack that allows him to engage with Zordon, because he's able to separately travel through space in a way that the others are not.
Battleizer gives him massive muscles.
Yes,
Let's
it
not
also
forget.
does. Yep. Yeah, so like Andros like has a strong case for being a Superman type, but at the end of the season they basically rid the world of all evil and sort of wipe the slate clean, so that the next season is a new cast, new gimmick, and then each season after that would be a new cast, new gimmick, up until we get to the Neo Saban era, where they would split up the seasons to split up the production time, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Are there any Rangers you want to bring up? Like I brought up Andros, but are there any Rangers you want to bring up in the interim? Like I think like Carter Grayson has like a strong claim to fame.
Yeah, Carter Grayson definitely, that square jaw, and he's a firefighter. Excellent.
Yeah, Lightspeed Rescue as a season that is about a rescue squad for Power Rangers was a really cool idea, and like really good for like that kind of like everyone's a goddamn hero here.
Yeah, so other characters I want to bring up. Jason from Mighty Morphin, he's got the square jaw look, and he got the guilt over Tommy. Like the Missing Green episode where right after Tommy loses his powers again, and then Zed captures the rest of his friends, and Jason's worrying, and Zordon gives him a pep talk, like, it's your duty, you can do this. And then he saves everyone and beats Godar in the Dark Dimension. Like, that's great. And then Tommy becomes the leader and gets the White Ranger powers. So like, oh well. Billy, we already said he's the Ted Cord of the series. Trini's probably more of a Flash type, because I'd argue she's the heart of the team and gets along with everyone. And the comics established that all the charity events done in Angel Grove are mainly her brainchild. And also, we can't forget the part where Shell shocked Zapper with the go function, and then she had to run up the mountain to heal the problem of the day. Like she's running fast.
Yeah.
Ooh, Zach. One good thing about the Zhu 2 footage is that he gets to wear the dragon shield in like the finale episode.
Yeah, that's a really cool episode.
And it's made better by the comics, because they established that Rita originally went to Zach for the Green Ranger powers, and that creates a kind of tension in there. And then he's eventually able to get over that with Tommy, and I start being real friends with him. So now that becomes a set off to the payoff of the season 1 finale. And also, and once and always, they say that Zach became a congressman.
Wait, what? He really?
Yeah. And I like to think that's a reference to like a special the comics did, like What I Did on My Summer Vacation, where we get to explore all the Rangers when they have like spring break. And what Zach does in spring break is that he goes to his brother's office in DC, and he works with his brother to help like the congresswoman in there like help pass legislation that will protect people whose homes were destroyed by the giant monster fights caused by the Rangers and Rita. It's fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, like for all the characters who are showing up from being off screen for a couple seasons, they always have like the most insane backstories for what happened in the interim. As which will happen with Tommy, for example, when we catch up with him next in Forever Red, where he now owns a juice bar that Skull and Bulk like work for him at.
Oh, Bulk and Skull, when the Rangers lose their memories temporarily, and they find out that they are the Rangers, but it's like, oh, but we gotta sacrifice our memories to give the Rangers back theirs. But we're gonna do it because we are heroes secretly deep down as well.
Oh yeah, I mean Bulk and Skull like are arguably the main characters. This is the stance of History of Power Rangers, so I don't want to like say that I'm the one creating it, but like Bulk and Skull are arguably the main character of the first 5 seasons. They have the biggest arcs for sure, because they are the characters who stick around that whole time, and thus we get to see their most heroic moments. I mean, it's a show about superheroes. There's going to be a bunch of good superheroes in the show about superheroes.
My opinion of Cat Hilliard has really grown in years because when Tommy gets brainwashed again in Zeo, Cat has to depower and like give him a big hug to try and get him remember, and it works because this is Power Rangers. And also the part where they first try to pin the Zeo crystal, part of that is like Tommy going to the catacombs of Zed's castle and Cat trying to buy time. Is like, all right, I will offer you my immortal soul just to buy Tommy some time to get the crystal. Which is like, okay, that's get some respect from me. Who else is there? TJ fought off the first Megazord they had when it was under control by the bad guys. Fought him off single-handedly to try and gain control back of it. He was the one who said, okay, we lost our turbo powers, but we still got to go into space to find Zordon, right? If not us, then who? We got to do that.
TJ should be reminded is the first Black Red Ranger and the Red Ranger after Tommy. So like, it sucks that he gets demoted to Blue in the next season, but that's only if you see it as a demotion. Which some seasons like put that forth, but other seasons do not. Other seasons it's just like, oh yeah, well that's the color you are, but it doesn't really matter.
Also from Turbo and In Space, I have Cassie, the Pink Ranger down there. Like she's kind of a Superman analog in the sense that she has her own comet, the Super Horse. Like there is an episode where her dog gets turned into a human, and she gets to know him, and he's like, "No, this is bad." Power Rangers Turbo is weird.
Yeah. I mean, like I want us to, I want to caution us from going too far into every act of heroism. Into every act of heroism that we have in here, because like it's a show about superheroes who are really, really good people. Like it's not a very complicated show typically, and the complications still usually doesn't like have those like moral gray areas for everyone, or if they do, there's a big redemption arc for them. So let's talk about Forever Red is what I was what I'm getting at. So J Mike, did you ever watch this episode Forever Red? Do you know what we're talking about?
I've heard about it, but I've never said I've watched it before. But feel free to spoil it for me.
I mean, the assembly of Red Rangers, all the Red Rangers that have shown up in the show up until that point, win. Spoiler, it's a mid-season episode that is a crossover in Power Rangers Wild Force, which is a middling season. Like it's got its strengths and it's got its weaknesses, but it has two of the best crossovers ever. And in it, they've got Forever Red, which this was the 10-year anniversary, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the 10-year anniversary season, and they do a crossover where every single Red Ranger shows up and fights a bunch of bad guys. They have unmorphed fights, they have morph fights, they all get together, and then they win because it's Power Rangers. Of course they win. Particularly the Red Ranger from that season gets like the kill shot because like of course he does. He's the Red Ranger of that season.
Do you agree with Linkar in that they should have swapped out Orko and gotten Rocky in the Ninjetti outfit?
I would have rather had both in that scenario. I did want the actual costume of the Alien Ranger, but yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to have gotten Rocky in there as well.
Also, in that case, we probably would have had to cut out Eric, the Quantum Ranger, out of there.
I mean, like that's the thing. Like, who would I cut someone for Rocky? It's hard to say because I really like that the Quantum Ranger's there. It's a great team up with some really cool things, and the Quantum Ranger in particular is one I like because it's the season coming right after Time Force. So having the Red Time Force Ranger and the Quantum Ranger as this like buddy cops duo that keeps on showing up, I really enjoy in this season, and so I would really not want to lose the Quantum Ranger for that reason.
Yeah. And he was in the first crossover, so new audiences are already familiar with Wes and Eric being a thing.
Exactly. So, long story short, it is a baller team up that we get like all the morphing sequences. It's just really cool. Now, is it perfect? No. Like instead of having like basically reused Big Bag Beetleborg costumes, like it should have been the Psycho Red as like the main villain for the piece, because then that way Psycho Red makes sense for why it's all the Red Rangers as opposed to all the teams. But even though you have a couple of like logic leaps to be like, oh, they assemble all the Red Rangers to stop a really big threat, it's still great. It's really cool. And it's really fun to check in with all these like Red Rangers and see where they're at. And they're all just being heroes at this point.
That could be Psycho Red leading the Big Bad Beetleborgs repurpose as the Machine Empire.
Totally fine on that front too. It would be great. Regardless, they just should have had Psycho Red there so you had yet another Red Ranger, and it would explain why it's all Red Rangers coming for him.
Like people always do if I could erase my memory of watching this the first time and rewatch it, I would do that again with Forever Red, because my shock at seeing the Beetleborg costumes show up again is like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I should note that there are other like Easter eggs in there for fans of the show. there's a lot of like details in it. It's a lot in just one episode. It's not a 2-part episode. It is 22 minutes. It is a blitz of a Power Ranger story. But that blitz is a really cool blitz. And it shows off all these characters and reminds us who Tommy is after he'd been gone for a couple seasons.
Do we want to talk about the writer of Forever Red, Amit Bhamick, and his plans for season 11?
How many Power Ranger seasons are there?
Mm.
Or American Power Ranger seasons are there?
I mean, we're what, at the 30th anniversary?
Well, that could mean like regular TV things are like one season consists of like 40 episodes in the beginning. Well, and that could last like
the first couple
years.
Seasons are like that, and then most of them after that are like 1 season, 1 year kind of thing. And even then, the first couple seasons, that was still in a year that those seasons came out. It would be like a fall to spring kind of year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So it was what, 93 when Power Rangers first came out. So we're at 31 years right now. And there's a few years where we're missing it. So I think it's like 25 seasons.
Do the super seasons count as separate
I was about to
seasons?
say something. I could see your face and I was like, oh, I think we're about to talk about the super seasons.
Does the Disney recut of Mighty Morphin Season 1 count as a separate season?
I would say that definitely does not. And the super seasons technically do, mostly because at least one of them is actually covering 2 Sentai seasons for me, which is Mega Force and Super Mega Force.
Yeah.
And that makes it just kind of messy. And I think you just kind of have to call them 2 seasons because they are called 2 seasons. And there's like quality differences between some of them anyway. Even though like I kind of roll my eyes at that part of it all, I'm just like, yeah, no, like Dino Charge like is Dino Charge. Like you don't need it to be Dino Supercharge. Like did need to be a separate season. Like there's not a big thing that is different between them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's skip Ninja Storm. I like Ninja Storm, but like it and its relationship with what was it, the Helix?
Hexagon.
The Hexagon. The idea was to have Tommy leading a network of Power Ranger teams kind of thing. I don't know enough to really go too far into it, and we never got it.
I want to say that they would be operating out of a building called the Hexagon, which is a direct reference to the Pentagon. And is basically being like Ranger cleanup of Tommy sending his Ranger teams to go after all the loose ends that the shows couldn't really get into because stock footage ran out. And I believe that Tommy was going to be revealed to have gone mad with power in his attempts to be the new Zordon and trying to help protect the world. And he donned the Shinken green outfit as like his final suit. And then he starts over. And then like he's shown the error of his ways and the Hexagon is disbanded. Like I would honestly love for Boom Studios to adapt that as a storyline for the books.
But that would be like effectively an Elseworlds kind of thing.
Mm.
And I thought it's a cool idea. It's not what we got, and we did get something cool with Tommy in the season right after that. So it was a cool idea that got leaked that never really had any sort of like real traction to it, but cool idea nonetheless. However, the following season, we got Dino Thunder, where Tommy gets to be the mentor. J-Mike, have you seen anything about this one?
No.
Yeah, he gets to complain about the music the kids are listening to these days.
Yep.
Oh my god.
He's Dr. Oliver at this point, and he's a paleontologist who also builds robots.
He's a paleontologist? Oh my god.
He got his PhD in 8 years. That's how that works.
Complete pivot from being the juice bar Don.
Hey man, people switch up careers early in their life.
It's a complete pivot from when he was a race car driver.
Yeah. This is a man who contains multitudes. Anyway, so this is the next dinosaur-themed season. It's a big nod to the original. And so he becomes the mentor, and then midway through the season, because there's only 3 of them on the team initially.
Not even midway into the season. 5 episodes into the season.
Okay, well, so anyway, so Tommy gets new powers in this season and becomes the Black Ranger on the team, which is what, like a brachiosaur, I think is his design.
Yes.
That becomes like this whole thing for this new iteration of the character. And they do the Green Ranger plot, but this time with a White Ranger who also gets split into an evil clone later on in the season. And so Tommy is basically watching like exactly what happened to him as a teenager play out in this whole like situation. And he's now the mentor trying to guide them through it.
When he's not stuck in amber.
Right. Yes. They have a whole chunk where like Jason David Frank wanted to like come home to America because they were filming in New Zealand at that point. And so they had him like stuck in amber and then trapped inside his suit for a while. And then you get the really cool episode where when he's like trying to break free of this whole situation, he like battles himself. Like he battles the Green Ranger version of himself, the Zeo Ranger version of himself, and then the Turbo Ranger. No, the white.
He battles the Zeo Ranger version, the White Ranger, and then the Green Ranger.
I was like, not two reds. That doesn't make sense.
Well, it does make sense because it was Turbo Red too.
It would make sense, but I'm saying that like they only do 3, and it's a rule of 3 situation
Yeah.
there. So that's a cool episode with it all. But the character had like come around to being the mentor by that point. And that would have been sort of like a fun place to sort of like leave it off. But then more recently, they've decided to canonize like the weird shit that people have put in like all the all the comics and stuff.
I do think some version of Hexagon did still happen because in like the first episode of Dino Thunder, they do establish that Tommy basically built the foot soldiers of the season, the Tyrannodrones.
Yeah. Also that.
And they never really get into it or deal with it ethically.
Paleontologist, geneticist, roboticist, like Tommy Oliver's a man who contains multitudes. And so if he contained also a secret government project, I guess that makes enough sense. I mean, again, like we see that the Power Rangers in the background have sort of like become networks of people who are connected and like share in this burden of being superheroes behind the scenes of each new team that shows up in the interim. It's been an interesting journey. Next time he shows up, though, would be in Super Mega Force when they do the legendary battle. And that sucks.
I do love how he gets to be both White Ranger and Green Ranger. And then when they're panning to all the different Ranger teams, like he's not there for Zeo and he's not there for Dino Thunder in their attempts to try and keep things straight. And yet there's still duplicates of Turbo and In Space there.
Yep, it's a weird situation.
But, you know, maybe those were the robot rangers from Turbo that they did in that one episode.
Yeah, so there's this whole thing in it where because it's a team up of all these rangers and they get so many of them, but because they're using Japanese footage wherein that team up is of just totally separate teams, it doesn't work with the number of seasons that were actually the same people, just with power swaps and so forth. It's one of the reasons. It's not the reason. It wouldn't even be a reason by itself, but because there's all these other things that are going on. But it's one of the reasons why the legendary battle is not good. Like it's not a good episode. It's cool to see all the teams there, but like the threat doesn't make any sense because like the fight was supposed to be the opening of the season in the Japanese series. Like the battle is the start and they win, but they win at what cost? Their powers are lost all throughout space. That's why it works stakes wise there. As the finale where they're just fighting fucking mooks the whole time, it's not interesting. All the main villains are down at that point in the season.
Well, if you watch the extended cut, they do fight the big bad guy that they introduced at the very last minute.
But that's my point. Like the whole thing is just fucking boring, and there's no like real stakes to the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense. The cameos are nice, but like it sounds like it was like kind of shitty for people in terms of like who got the cameos and whatnot. The whole thing was like kind of exciting to be like following up to it, but they had really dropped the ball in terms of the actual finished project, and that makes sense because like Megaforce and Super Megaforce are not good seasons. They are rough seasons of the show.
But then we got Dino Charge and Beast Morphers saying like, oh, we can do a good season. We can do a good anniversary season.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like Dino Charge would have been a great anniversary season. It would have been another dinosaur season. But yeah, the Megaforce and Super Megaforce are not great. And like cameos are thus like also not that great. And like Jason David Frank really pushed his notoriety in the fan community to be like one of the main characters in this crossover. So he's very front and center. It's like, oh wow, the original Green Ranger, is sort of how they respond to him. It doesn't do anything for or against him really, aside from indicating that he has both Saba and also the Dragon Dagger at this point, which is interesting because he also like apparently can Zeomorph and also might have the Brachio powers. I don't know. It doesn't matter if he does or not because he clearly has at least like 2 or 3 other power sets.
We would get confirmation in the anniversary episode of Ninja Steel where they recruit a bunch of other Rangers and Tommy.
Yep.
And when they introduced the concept of the Master Morpher, which is like, I get to slop through my different Ranger powers now.
Which would be cooler if they had more defined powers as being different for them. The one problem with Power Rangers season over season is that typically the power set for each of them is some generic amount of durability, super strength, and super leaping, and sometimes an energy blaster too, but that's not like as part of the main like canon for any of the teams. My point just being that, like, yeah, it's cool, but technically wouldn't the Zeo powers just be the best regardless? Because, like, the Zeo ones were explicitly more powerful and growing in power on top of the White or Green Ranger powers.
The thing is, if they actually went into the different sets, there are some differences. Like the Zeo Ranger powers grow over time. The White Ranger powers cannot be corrupted by evil. The Black Ranger powers let you go invisible.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's cool stuff there, but I'm saying like it would be great if it was even more distinct differences between them and
Yeah.
didn't have to be really like played up in a way, because like the effective power of the White Ranger was not that different from the Green Ranger in the actual show. In fact, arguably worse, because the Green Ranger, like when the Green Ranger was cloned, he actually wins, and the Dragon Zord does like surprisingly well against the White Tiger Zord, which should not happen. Just for the record,
Blasphemy.
I love the Dragon Zord, but the White Tiger Zord can turn into a Megazord by itself.
I still love that fight.
I know. It's just like it's just a
Again, classic Superman of
yeah, it's a Superman
the
3
hero
fight.
fighting the evil version of himself.
Yeah. All we need is Tommy just like drunk, like flinging stuff up against walls, like in Superman 3.
Some of the sillier episodes of Power Rangers also remind me of those Silver Agey comic book covers. Like, what is it, Rita's PETA in season 3, where like Tommy gets infected with some kind of bug. Is like, I can't stop eating jug food. Reminded me of that cover of Superman. Was like, oh, Jimmy, help! I can't stop eating all these hamburgers.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certainly a Silver Agey quality to Power Rangers. That fits really well. Like some of the goofier ones, like those pizzas are no match for the arm of the law, or whatever the line was from Turbo.
The evil pizzas were no match for a simple stoplight.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad I have you here for the accuracy on this one.
yeah.
That said, I feel like this has just been fun to kind of gush about like Power Ranger stuff, but we would be here all day if we tried to list off every character who had like a really heroic moment on the show, which is why we kind of wanted to talk about Tommy, even though like Tommy is kind of like it's like cliche for him to be your favorite Power Ranger in like a lot of the community. Like we wanted to talk about him, like Jason David Frank, passed away, recently. And like, that was kind of the thing that like started this conversation, because like love him or hate him or have like mixed feelings about him. Like it's really sad that life can get you to that point. And he played a hero for a lot of us, a character that like we really looked up to. And even if he became like too much the focus of the show at a certain point, because it is supposed to be an ensemble production, that wasn't entirely him. And that, we were begging for it at the time. Again, like it's cool to see this character who kind of naturally, from the charisma of the actor and the way the writing handled this character, went from being this sort of Lancer type, this not the hero of the story type, the arch rival, and became the main hero, and became the main hero for a lot of people. So Nick, I know like you brought this as a topic from that framework. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, like it kind of makes me weary, but also curiously hopeful about where the franchise goes in the future. Because like the loss of Jason David Frank, it's not like the loss of, say, George Reeves from the old Superman serials, another hero actor who tragically lost in an unpleasant way. Because like we've had other Superman after that. Like I don't
Yeah.
really think we're gonna get another Tommy Oliver, but it makes me curious about the new reboot. It really strikes me that after Cosmic Fury, like they decided to fully go forward with a reboot. And even more so in that Cosmic Fury takes the time to firmly set. Right, so we mentioned Power Rangers SPD earlier. If that takes place 20 years in the future from when it aired, so 2025, which is a year away. Ugh.
Don't you just love it when the future science show is like, oh, that's the past now?
But yeah, Cosmic Fury takes the time to establish the status quo going into SPD, which is interesting. And also the Soul of the Dragon comic book boom release, which is kind of like their answer for like Old Man Logan, whatever happened to Man of Tomorrow, but with Tommy Oliver. Part of the plot of that book is Tommy like going to SPD headquarters and asking Sky about his son. So it's like it's really interesting is like this character is depicted as this age when they were in 2005 and is acting with old man Tommy Oliver.
Yeah, we should have talked a little bit about the Boom comics, by the way.
I've never read the Boom comics.
They're pretty good. Like I really enjoyed them in general, but the original big concept that they rolled out in the comics after just doing like good Power Ranger stories for the first couple of issues and teasing this bigger bad guy was the Dracon, which is an evil alternate reality version of Tommy with the fused power of the Green and White Rangers.
And much like with Superman, I'm sick of Dracon. I'm sick of evil Superman and I'm sick of Dracon.
Yeah, definitely became the most popular thing to come out of the comics just because it was such a cool idea. It's in the fighting game that came out, Battle for the Grid, which I was just replaying the other night and I still enjoy. It's quite a fun little fighting game.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fan of Dracon past the first 16 issues of the main book. I'm probably not even past Shattered Grid. He does work very well as like a counterpoint to the main version of Tommy, because throughout those first 16 issues of the book, Tommy has been dealing with a lot of insecurity. Like he still has flashes of Rita from when he was under mind control. Like he's hearing social media talk about how the Dragon Zord busted down a bridge in Angel Grove, but now they're letting him on the team. What's up with
Mhm.
that? And like he's dealing with like tensions between the different ranger groups, and again the whole thing with Zach originally being given the chance to be the Green Ranger, and that's an extra special tension. But then Dracon invades the main universe and depowers all the other Rangers. So it's like, okay, I have to fight. Jason's going to be in the Dragon Zord. So it's Jason in the Dragon Zord and Tommy Zordless fighting a big giant black dragon monster. And he's able to hold his own pretty well. Like, again, the whole thing with the TV show is that Tom is the most popular character, so he's going to be the leader. Whereas the books, I felt like really are making a effort to make Tommy work for the status that he has and make him earn it more.
Yeah, and then they also give like Jason like real stuff to do after he leaves because
Hmm.
Zach and Trini like actually go off and become sort of like special forces rangers. What is it, the Omega Rangers?
Omega Rangers, which I'm looking back now, I'm kind of mixed about. Like like it's a dirty deal that they got in the show where they were fired because they were wanting equal pay. But at the same time, I don't really remember a lot of the Omega Ranger stuff from when I read it all the comics back a while ago.
I mean, it's just like cool to like have them like have like a really active role
Hmm.
outside of it. It's the same reason why I like the Pink Ranger mini that they did.
Pink.
Was it just pink?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, has like one of the coolest designs where through her powers, Zach gets his powers reactivated. So he's wearing a version of his costume, but with a hoodie, and it all has like pink trim in addition to the like the black and white on his design. That hoodie,
Hmm.
if anyone could somehow make it for me, I would pay money for it because it's just so goddamn cool. In the Boom books, they've done this a couple of times where they've had like the powers get kind of shuffled, like when Tommy's powers were like distributed amongst all the other members, so they were all Green Rangers for a minute.
Yeah, so they couldn't morph, but Tommy's coin was still active. So it's like, okay, if we filter your power coins through the green energy, you all can morph, but your suits are green. But you have access to your Zords then. That's how that worked.
Really cool stuff. And like when they've done like the Ninja Turtles crossover with Power Rangers, like they've had the Turtles get
Yeah.
Power Ranger versions of themselves. They've played
Mm.
it with the Power Ranger stuff, and it's been like a very fun collaboration series there.
I have the TMNT Power Rangers sequel. I'm not ready yet, but I do know like Ninjor shows up and he grants Casey Jones ninja powers.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
So yeah, some other things about the early Boom Studio comic books, like they give again about that whole thing of making Tommy work for the status that fans have given him, and making him truly deserving of Superman of Power Rangers. They give him some really Superman ass lines, like in the final fight with Draken of the first 16 issues. Tommy has a line about how, like, yeah, I brought on my friends, but that's okay. Everyone here fears you, they don't trust in you. And like the line is, trust and hope need more resolve to believe in than paranoia and fear. Like that's very Superman of you, Tommy.
Yeah.
And like the first issue of the main book starts with Bulk and Skull shooting video for their YouTube series about how they live in Ranger capital of America, and like interviewing all the people about how do you feel about the Green Ranger joining the other team. And like that sets up Tommy's doubt throughout those first issues, but again he gets more confident in himself, more sure of his place in the team. And he has a really good monologue that I trimmed out some of it. I trimmed down some of it, but I feel like I gotta read that for posterity. Like, so at the end of the arc, when he's finally giving his interview for Bulk and Skull, he says like, the thing you don't get out of any of the web footage or photographs is that while the Power Rangers clearly care about us, they care about each other just as much. And really, to me, that's so amazing about the Rangers. Because if they can band together in the face of overwhelming odds, if they can put aside their differences and trust in each other, if they can believe in each other no matter the odds, then so can we. The Power Rangers are a reminder that all of us are better together. That even when we're at our weakest, as long as we trust in each other, then we're never really alone. We're never lost. There's always hope. Mm-hmm.
Yep, very, very Supermanly.
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like we've covered the gist of Power Rangers in general, and like with Tommy Oliver in particular. I feel good about where we've gotten to on this one.
I just want to talk about Soul of the Dragon really quickly. Soul of the Dragon, I mentioned it's the Old Man Logan of Power Rangers, Man of Tomorrow Power Rangers, but more hopeful of it. It's basically Tommy finally coming to terms with his age and his place as a ranger, place as a important ranger, and like it's the future of 1 year from now. And basically we're seeing like SPD being established. Like Kat is able to take a vacation trip to Triforia and then back. It's like we have space travel, Tommy. This is cool. Like Kat has a really good line that I brought up when Jason David Frank passed away, and the Power Rangers audio drama group was like asking fans and castmates to like say a few words about Jason David Frank. This is the line that stuck with me from Kat. Like Tommy's like, "Oh, did we really do as good as we thought we did for the world? We still have to deal with like border patrols and like terrorist plots. So like I don't feel like I made a difference." And Kat has to like calm him down. It's like, no, you did make a difference. Anyone could sit there and say, I could have done more. But it's just as important to recognize what you have done and the impact you have made. Otherwise, you're just going to drive yourself crazy, which is something I think we can all take close to heart.
Yeah.
And like, I
Mhm.
don't want to say who this next line is from because it's a spoiler, but it's a really great monologue from someone who has a complicated history with Tommy and Rita, but I don't want to leave it out. So the line goes, I'm so sorry, Tommy, for my part in what Rita did to you all those years ago. However, it makes me so happy even now to see you make something positive from such a terrible ordeal. You always know how to rise above the odds, Tommy. If anyone can save your child, I know it is you.
Yeah, really showing like the faith in the character.
But also the fact that Tommy's able to retire and pass on the torch to his kid. That means the Zeo Christmas framing device is canon.
Oh man. For those not aware, Power Rangers has had Christmas specials. Some of them have shown flash forwards to the future, one of which showed Tommy with Kat married with kids. I feel like we've covered Tommy pretty well. We've covered Power Rangers pretty well. There's so much
Mhm.
of it all. Like it's a fun series in general. I tune in and out for certain amounts of it all currently, but there's some really good seasons out there. Like if you're curious about it, I would just say check out RPM is like an easy one to like just go to and not need to like have,
Mm.
you know, a lot of like background kind of info on, and it will just be a good season. But there's like so much material out there, and like it's easy to like just pop in for a few things here or there, check out like the team up episodes, and then, you know, go from there. If you like the season, be like, oh cool, I'll actually watch the rest of this. It's a fun series that I am glad to have rediscovered as an adult, because it shows like what you can kind of glean from even like the most like kid oriented kind of media out there. And like I think that you can really glean a story of a hero like Tommy Oliver. So Nick, thank you for bringing this as a subject for us to talk about.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
For the listeners out there, where can people find you and follow you?
I am in the wins at the moment. I still have my Reddit, MyCKOUNT. I use that mainly to talk about like slight one small change rewrites. I've also been on the Certain Point of View network before. I've talked about Squadron Supreme with Case. We talked about
Yeah, here on this show.
the Power Rangers reboot. Yeah. I talked about Squadron Supreme on Men of Steel before. I've talked about the Power Rangers reboot movie from 2017 on Another
Yep.
Pass. I've also talked with friends of the show, Angela Bullock and JD Martin, on Fables and Reflections. We talk about Sandman and Neil Gaiman. I've also been on JD's other show, Comics Quest. I've talked about Visions by Tom King and The Marvels as well.
Great books, great episodes.
And depending on when this comes out, I will be or have been on Another Pass Again talking about Godzilla 2019, King of the Monsters.
Oh, this is going to drop well before that episode.
Okay. Okay, very good. Very
Yeah.
good.
So people should check out those episodes. Like, you bring a lot to every conversation that you come to.
Oh, thank you.
So people should absolutely check out those episodes. And then they should try to track down J-Mike. J-Mike, where can people find you and follow you?
I am like a shadow, a ghost in the wind. I am everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But mostly on Twitter right now at JMike101. There you can find me. I occasionally reach out and post a couple of gifts with Case whenever he tags me in something. Eventually, I will move to Blue Sky. Still working on it.
No, like, social media has become very hard these days.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still the lifeblood of being a podcaster.
I quit Twitter in 2020.
Probably for the best, but...
Yeah.
So I am on Twitter and Blue Sky at Case Aiken. I am on Instagram at Quetzalcoatl5 because I'm holding on to my AIM screen name from high school for dear life. And then you can find me on the Discord for Certain POV. You can find a link to our Discord server at certainpov.com or in the show notes or wherever you are watching or listening to this. We've got links to our Discord. Come, hang out. It's a great time. So find us at the Certain POV Discord, and then come back and check out our next episode. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are J. Mike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is scored and edited by Geoff Moonen. And our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Geoff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
We don't bite unless it is consensual. In which case, then we should talk. But what does that even mean?
I think you're asking the listeners to slide into your DMs, which is the bold mood for a married man.
Yeah, no, that wasn't exactly what I was trying to do, but I don't know. Jeff, leave this in. Anyway.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.